I want to first start off with congratulating a meteorologist who has done an amazing job with the CDM. She earned her CDM certification. It's her third certification in our field. So I definitely want to congratulate Miss Alonso. She has Vanessa Alonso. I want to make sure that everyone knows that just an outstanding meteorologist out towards around Kansas City Chiefs. There we go. So definitely just want to bring that up and just bring that to the forelight and celebrate that. So we have a lot to talk about, don't we? We have the threat of thunderstorms for tomorrow morning. We'll talk about that. Of course, Memorial Day weekend. Of course, everyone's interested in that. And since we have last chatted, we issued the forecast for the tropical Atlantic and also for the summer. So tonight, I'm going to go over all my thoughts on what to expect for the summer. Some little clues I'm seeing in the model guidance, some clues I'm seeing in the observations. We'll talk about what that means for us. And also, we'll go over the hurricane forecast, what I'm expecting this year, and why I'm concerned about the Gulf Coast. Okay, so we'll talk about that and all that. So, and of course, as always, taking all your questions. I'm already seeing some great questions out there from Karn and Andrew, so we'll definitely go over all that. And as always, after we answer all the premium questions, because the premium members get all their questions answered, then we'll go to YouTube and to X and see if there's anything on there. Of course, we're also live right now on Instagram and on LinkedIn as we continue to run tests to make sure that everything is running properly on these platforms. So when we get more significant storms, hurricanes, whatnot, that can be covered as well with confidence. So let's start with the data. And then, of course, we'll answer all the questions that are showing up here. Now, as you know, I've been discussing this for quite some time, the changes that are going on in our atmosphere. What makes this year really, really interesting is that we have multiple changes going on at the same time in the atmosphere. So it's not just the fact we're going from El Nino to La Nina. That alone would create all sorts of havoc. But we also have a changing state in the northern Pacific going to a negative PDL, and we have changing state in the stratosphere going from an east-based QBO to a west-based QBO. And how all those factors not only influence the weather pattern, but how they interact with each other is going to have a very interesting setup for our weather pattern moving into the summer. So when we're studying the changes of La Nina, since we last talked, it has gotten significantly colder in Nino 1+2 and Nino 3, starting to cool off in Nino 3+4. Meanwhile, Nino 4 is warm. Nino 4, this area right here, is still technically an El Nino state with warm sea surface temperatures. Everyone else is either neutral or falling into a La Nina state, for example, 1+2. Now, never ever base the intensity of a forecast of La Nina or El Nino on this region, Nino 1+2. And the reason why is because it's the most shallow. So it gets a lot of influence from upwelling and storms and winds coming off of South America and Central America. So you don't want to use that as a bellwether. But what you do want to do is study the subsurface temperatures. So we'll talk about that in a second. Another factor, as we look at the whole globe here, is the negative PDO influence, which is going to lead to more of an upper level low as we move forward over the next several weeks towards the Gulf of Alaska, and more of a weak trough here, kind of an extension of that upper level low over the Pacific Northwest. Now remember, we're in the warm season, so the polar jet stream is elevated and lifting up more towards Canada. right? So it's kind of staying out of the United States for the most part. You still have some influences from the polar jet stream, but really the best lifting and dynamics from the polar jet stream is typically focused more towards the Canadian border and further away from us. What we get is influences from somewhat of a Pacific jet and the subtropical jet. But during La Nina, which is starting to develop, the subtropical jet stream starts to weaken. So when you get this signal right here showing up, what that typically does is support a little bit more of a trough in the Pacific Northwest into the Gulf of Alaska, and it supports more of a ridge around the Gulf of Mexico and the Western Atlantic. Now let's take a look at the Atlantic itself. Okay, we'll zoom in on this if we can. There we go. Okay, now a lot has been made about how warm the Atlantic is, and we've talked about this several times over the past couple of weeks because I want to make sure that you have an understanding of the potential here so that way you prepare. The best thing to do when you're dealing with an active hurricane season on the way is don't panic, don't buy into all the hype, prepare, right? So we've been talking about that for quite some time. Make sure you have bottled water. That way you don't have to rush out there with the panic of everyone else and get the last bottle that's in the store. Make sure you have batteries. I would even suggest doing the same process in the fall for nor'easter season, especially around the northern mid-Atlantic. You get coastal flooding concerns in the winter. You get snow concerns, power outages. You want to have backup plans for this. So that way you already have the tools and the supplies that you need in these situations well ahead of any storm that shows up. So now it's the time to prepare. That way you don't have to get beaten up in a store trying to find a battery or a flashlight. Excuse me. But anyway, the Western Atlantic is very warm. No doubt about that. Why is that important? Water, by the way. The reason why that's important is because this is going to provide a lot of fuel for storms should they develop. Right? Remember that caveat there. The other thing that stands out to me is this cool zone right here. Now, the reason why this stands out to me is that typically when we see that signal showing up right around the Gulf Stream here, this signal supports a greater potential for surface high pressure. Setting up right around, look at that dot right there, right around Bermuda. Now, you guys may have heard before the Bermuda high system. So this tells me you're more likely to get an expansive high right around here, because the cool sea surface temperatures in these areas relative to normal supports an increase in low level density, right, in the surface. So think of it like this. You have this cool-ish compared to the rest of the Western Atlantic zone. So it builds up heights, it builds up density. So while you're building up that density, it supports the potential for more surface high pressure, which when you look at it, you only need to extend it up to about 850 millibars to really influence the storm tracks of these hurricanes. It also means that if you're going to have an enhancement here, and because you have your negative PDO, an enhancement here in terms of high pressure, then you have to have a weakness in between this because there has to be a balance, right? Because remember, the atmosphere is always looking for balance. So I'm seeing this and I'm saying, okay, when I see this signal, there has to be a weakness in this ridge complex. So that's the first clue. Let's put that aside and look at the rest of the data. So when we talk about the state of La Nina, it's not only the strength, but also the orientation that matters. A lot of people forget this. They just say La Nina, La Nina. They don't really look at the differences in how these features develop, right? When we have this La Nina developing here, we're seeing naturally the coldest signal here in the eastern zones, which is typical for this development. But what I really am focusing on is the lack of cold water in our western zones. This would tell me that as this La Nina develops, it's more likely to be central to eastern base than central to western base. Now, western base, when we talk about that, we mean towards the date line here. Okay? Why is this important? Well, it influences where tropical convection develops in the Pacific. That tropical convection influences the evolution of our short waves and our troughs in the polar and subtropical jet stream. It influences the orientation and location of troughs and ridge axes. So if I'm developing more of an east to central base La Nina, this tells me that there is going to be more support for a robust ridge around the Bahamas than towards the western Gulf Coast. And the convective state towards the date line is going to help with more rising motion in the Pacific, in this area here. You're going to see more convection. Watch out for the Western Pacific. Now you might be saying, Stephen, why do I care about the Western Pacific? Why do I care about Japan? Okay, I'll tell you. If we're seeing a lot more convection around and to the west of the date line, you're going to increase your potential for tropical systems. So, let me go back to this right here. You get a lot of hurricanes starting to develop out here and lifting up and recurving out into the northern Pacific. And they interact in this area here where we have very warm waters. You have a higher potential for strong storms to interact with the polar jet stream. And when you get this recurvature, you tend to start to support more of a weakness and, dare I say, even a trough trying to push into the eastern United States. Sometimes this could be a signal to set up an upper level low or at the very least, a weakness around the Tennessee River Valley. So you have that feature going on there. And you have this influence of suppression of convection here, which means the Eastern Pacific stays relatively quiet this year. An increase in the Western Pacific because you have all this warm water for it to feed on. So you have tropical systems coming in like this, enhancing the polar jet stream, enhancing the trough that sets up around the Gulf of Alaska and into the Pacific Northwest, and opens up the potential for more of a weakness in this area here. While all that's happening, you have all this fuel here with all of the potential here for these storms to develop to act as a conduit to send moisture into this area and this area. Now, this doesn't mean I'm saying that you're going to get tropical systems slamming into the northern mid-Atlantic. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that there is more support here to transport tropical moisture up towards the northern mid-Atlantic in terms of remnant low-pressure systems, in terms of near misses and storms. But certainly this increases, this signal here, the combination of these signals here that I'm pointing out, increases the potential for more of an expansive ridge here to send more tropical systems here and here. So again, we're just looking at observations. We haven't even looked at the model data yet. So that's why I got very concerned when I start seeing this signal here. Because again, we're putting everything together, right? And one of the things that we've been waiting for is for a gradual change in the forcing that's going on in the atmosphere. Now, you've heard me talk about the SOI quite a bit, okay? When we were looking for El Nino, we wanted to make sure that, hey, look, it's in a negative state, but also throughout the winter, we pointed out that, look, it may be a strong El Nino in terms of temperatures, but in terms of forcing, it really isn't, and it really wasn't. Now we're moving towards a La Nina state. Again, no sign of this becoming a strong La Nina. I know that there was a lot of talk out there of a super La Nina. There's literally no data for that. In fact, let me backtrack for a second. And let me show you the model data itself. And scroll down here. Yeah. Okay, so this right here, again, this is all on the cpc.ncep.noaa.gov. I know a lot of dots and whatnot, but this is all free data. So like you can look at this yourself at your own free time. But there is very little in terms of the average. You guys have a few outliers, which you always do, okay, with model guidance. You have some outliers saying, hey, look, it'll just stay El Nino, which is obviously false. You only have 2 models that really support a super strong La Nina, and both of them a NASA GMAO model data, which really no one uses. So you just kind of throw it in there for the average. Your average, which is these thicker lines right here, suggests a weak to moderate La Nina. So I don't know where everyone's coming off with this whole super La Nina thing. It's not realistic. And if you want to look at the CFS basically on average, a dashed line is the average, and then you have the model spread here, is basically keeping us between a weak to moderate La Nina with some outliers out towards a strong La Nina and some outliers out to no La Nina at all. So just kind of like a neutral cold state. So based on the data we're seeing, it would strongly suggest more of a weak to moderate La Nina on the way, probably somewhere around minus 1.0 degrees Celsius as far as a anomaly around Nino 3.4. And also, the model guidance also is suggesting here more of an east to central based La Nina taking hold through the summer and into the winter months. We'll talk about influence on cold season several weeks from now. So you can see all this evolution taking shape, and you could see the changes that are going on forcing in the atmosphere. Now, the SOI has finally gotten to a neutral state. It's just starting to get ready to move into a positive state. So right now we have a muddled forcing mechanism in the atmosphere, which is why we've been seeing all this chaos. Another thing that we keep a look at for is the atmospheric angular momentum. Okay, I'm going to make this very, very simple. It's a bit of a complicated anomaly, but I'm going to make it very, very simple for like Met 101. Okay, when you're in negative, you're more in a El Nino-like environment. More high latitude blocking potential, more support for a robust jet stream complex with the polar and subtropical jet stream, more amplification. When you have a more positive state, opposite, more La Nina-like, okay, where you reduce the potential for high latitude blocking. You have a stronger polar jet than you do a subtropical jet stream. And everything is very progressive, okay? So this is starting to trend more and more towards a positive state in your EPS data. And part of that evolution is what's going on in the stratosphere that we've been talking about, where the QBO is changing. Now, why is this important? Well, we're going to put this all together, right? So the QBO, when it's in a negative state, which was during much of the winter months, right? That means the winds in the stratosphere are going that way, or going east, right? And so they're pushing against the natural circulation of the Earth. This leads to a lot of disruption in the evolution of our jet stream complex as it moves down towards the troposphere, and this leads to a higher potential for your high latitude blocking, stratospheric warming, so on and so forth. When it goes into a westerly state, now it's moving with the Earth. So the polar jet stream is moving faster. There's nothing fighting against it. There's nothing pushing against it. So this is why when you're in a positive QBO state, you're less likely to have high latitude blocking. Why is this important? Well, that pesky negative NAO that has been hanging around throughout the spring is kind of an echo of the previous pattern regime. Okay, an echo of the previous negative QBO. When you're going into this westerly state, that support for the negative NAO is going to fade, not fall off, but fade. And as it fades, you're going to see more and more support for a progressive polar jet stream towards the Canadian Maritimes. This also means that you're going to see an enhancement of the Western Atlantic Ridge. Okay? So we combine all these factors together, and we start to see the signals showing up in the long-range model guides as we move through June and July. What are we starting to see now? Broad trough around the Gulf of Alaska. Nice progressive expansive ridge complex over the southern tier, which is typical what you would expect with the La Nina. There's our weakness, and there's our Western Atlantic ridge. Now, you never take this verbatim. I think we learned that from the previous winter, where this model guidance was strongly suggesting perfect negative NAO setups, right? And perfect winter storm setups, which unfortunately did not occur exactly. It came close, but close doesn't mean much. So you're seeing this take place here. And you start to think, okay, so what can this actually foster, right? As we move through June and July, what does this usually mean when I see this? And to me, when I see this and look back at previous summers and previous tropical seasons, is that this typically signifies cold fronts that approach and die out. A lot of severe thunderstorms dropping in from the Great Lakes, creating all sorts of havoc towards the Poconos and Catskills, and then diving into the Delaware River Valley, weakening. It's usually a signal for a robust Western Atlantic ridge, Bermuda high, humid, with a persistent southwesterly flow. We're not going to be dealing with northerly or northeasterly wind patterns all that much moving into the summer months. So anyone worried about smoke or anything of that nature from Canada, our wind pattern is going to be more from the southwest. So if we get any type of smoke setup, it's going to be more from anything that tries to develop around the Tennessee River Valley, for example, or the Ohio River Valley. So we're going to have predominantly a southwesterly wind, especially at 850 millibars. This pattern also tells me there's going to be a lot of moisture, low-level moisture. And this also tells me that the tropics are not going to have much in the way of vertical wind shear and not going to have an easy exit out away from the United States. Now, again, I'm not trying to scare anyone, but you combine the very warm waters and you combine this pattern with it, it's a concern. So I'm seeing these factors here, but let's expand it, right? So this is the seasonal data. And we're going to start off first with the surface pressures. Now, again, you never take this stuff verbatim, but what is it generally telling you? Well, it's telling me as I look through the summer, a lot below normal sea surface temperatures are expected on average around the Gulf of Mexico and around the Bahamas, but especially around the Gulf of Mexico as we move through the summer and into the fall. So this would tell me more likely we're going to have a lot of tropical systems, tropical low pressure systems, fester in that area. Again, we're not going into details. There's no forecast to tell you like what the above normal temperature, what the intensity of any of these storms would be, or if they even impact the United States. But it tells you where the general idea of the lowest surface pressures are going to be during the summer months. Also notice we have some above normal surface pressures here around the mid-Atlantic and New England. So typically when I'm looking at this type of signal, I'm looking at there's something here that's going to keep all our low pressure systems moving in this direction here. And there's also a tendency for above normal heights here. So this would support some sort of high pressure system. So we have the signals here for a broad ridge over the eastern United States. So let's take it a step further. How about temperatures? Well, clearly we're dealing with plenty of above normal temperatures, but look at the devil in the details here. You're seeing a little bit of enhancement here around the southeast. Cooler, not below normal, but cooler temperatures here towards Texas and here towards the western Atlantic. You also have cooler temperatures here. So what would create this type of signal? Okay, well, if you're going to have cooler temperatures, perhaps above normal rainfall driven by tropical systems heading in this direction. You'd also have more activity out here towards the western Atlantic, perhaps a recurve, more polar air dropping in because of that weakness in here. But also you'd have above normal temperatures here because of how tropical systems work. Now, follow me here for a second. When you have tropical systems, you have a lot of rising air, of course, around the storm, but you also have a lot of sinking air, subsidence, around those storms. So anyone to the north and west of the storm track tends to have really beautiful conditions, clear skies, and very warm temperatures because you have very strong sinking air. So this signal here of slightly above normal temperatures, slightly more above normal temperatures here, and cooler temperatures here and here would tell me that there's a potential here that we could be dealing with a predominant tropical storm track here and another one out here. So what does that look like in precip? Well, if we go by month, look at the signal showing up. If we go through the whole season, predominant signal here over the western Atlantic, which also happens to run right on the Gulf Stream, and another signal out here towards the plains. So this would make a lot of sense based on what we were talking about beforehand with the observations. We know the western Atlantic ridge is going to have more support. It's going to be able to expand. So there is supported by the observations. Now we take a look at the model guidance and we see those signals showing up in the model guidance as well. So what we're doing here is that we're not forecasting based on look at the models and then copy paste. We're looking at the observations and saying, well, what would make most sense? And then we go back to the models and we say, okay, based on these signals, what's more likely to happen with what we're seeing here in the model guidance and what we're seeing here in the observations? And then you combine them and you create your forecast. And what that looks like is a very active storm track through Florida and up along the East Coast, but not on the East Coast. Perhaps because we have a lot of weak cold fronts hanging around the northern Atlantic, producing near normal precipitation. And you're seeing above normal precipitation around Texas, around the western Gulf Coast, up towards the plains. Why? Well, you would have a western Atlantic ridge and tropical systems and the remnants of them rotating around it. So this would be with a weaker ridge, perhaps with a weakness. This would be with a more expansive ridge. So now let's get to the actual forecast. Before I do that, just so premium members know where to find it, we got the summer forecast here. I'll put the tropical forecast link under that. But you can also find the seasonal forecasts in the dashboard. There's a summer forecast, and I mentioned humidity and tropical storms. And then the tropical forecast, and then this feature right here is new this year based on the feedback I got from premium members, where considering the fact I'm probably going to be forecasting for at least 3 or 4 named storms at a time, we set up special separate locations for each one of those storms. So that way you don't have to scroll around and look for them. You'll find in each storm a specific area in the dashboard to find. So I just wanted to show that just so that way you know. And in case some of you guys who aren't premium members, this is what you get every day when we forecast. So looking at the summer forecast basically is driven by what's happening here and the changes that we just went over. In June, that's when I'm expecting a transition month, basically to feature the fading away of our old regime for the first half of the month, and the second half of the month to feature more humid conditions, temperatures slightly above normal, but nothing excessive. July and August is obviously when we see the heart of our summer months. And I do expect above normal temperatures and above normal precipitation. Why? Okay. First, let's talk about the temperatures. A lot of the above normal temperatures are going to be driven by the fact we're going to have a lot of humid conditions. Our low temperatures are going to be very warm. Our high temperatures, I'm not ruling out that we'll see a couple days near 100 or even at 100, but I think that the predominant theme for this summer will be to bounce between the mid 80s and mid 90s, where really it's going to be coming down to the heat index. It's going to be a major story, I think, this summer, where it's going to be 89 degrees, but it's going to feel like 97 because we're going to have dew points in the 70s. Okay? So technically, we might not have a lot of heat waves because it has to be 90 and above, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see, for 3 days, by the way, 90 and above for 3 days. But I certainly see a lot of days where it's 88 degrees, it feels like 93, 94. 89 degrees feels like 95 because of the humidity. A lot of mornings where we'll see low clouds and fog. And in terms of the above normal precipitation, removing the tropical influence out of it, watch out for slow moving thunderstorms this summer, especially around the Poconos down to the Delaware River. So a lot of eastern Pennsylvania, western New Jersey. The coastal plain, I think because of the nature of this weather pattern, is going to struggle to see strong thunderstorms. I think you're going to see a lot of weakening thunderstorms move in. One of the caveats, though, is that the sea breeze front, okay, that's where you're on the immediate coast. There's light and variable winds, and then you get cooler air from the ocean building in towards the coast. That's called a sea breeze front. That could lead to mesoscale boundaries that set up thunderstorms. This summer is going to be one where everyone's humid, but not everyone sees those thunderstorms. So you'll have one town with well below normal rainfall, and the next town is saying, please God, no more rain. It's going to be a lot of hit and miss thunderstorms. It's going to be a lot of stalled out boundaries, and it's going to be this scenario where if you get stuck under one of these thunderstorms, you could end up easily in a 2, 3, 4-inch rainfall event because of the nature of the mesoscale dynamics. And as always, I'm going to just bring in a little sprinkle of climate change. One of the things that I will likely be talking about in terms of a response to climate change is the enhanced above normal precipitable water values in the atmosphere. That's going to be a major story, I think. Watch out if we see 2-inch plus precipitable water values over the region, someone's going to get smacked really hard with a really impressive rainfall event. With that said, the wild card in this whole summer pattern in terms of rainfall, flooding, and whatnot is going to be when we have that recurvature of storms or we get a remnant low pressure system coming up the coast, how much of a heavy rainfall event that will lead to. One of the biggest concerns I have for this summer is that you get a stationary front hanging around the northern mid-Atlantic and you get that remnant moisture lifting up that's moisture loaded and running into that stationary front. That could lead to a very nasty rainfall event, especially as we move into August. So that's something that I'm very, very concerned about that we really have to monitor this year. Now we have an idea of what we could expect for the summer, with a lot of potential for an active weather pattern with thunderstorms, humid conditions, unsettled conditions. Now let's talk about the tropics. So, as always, everyone's always focused on what we expect in terms of number of storms. This feature with storm forecasts, how do I say this? The inclusion of subtropical storms has completely skewed this whole forecast dynamic. And what I mean by that is that beforehand, before Sandy, let's say before 2000, okay, let's go back to that. Subtropical storms were not added into this. They were kind of separate category numbers. So when you add subtropical storms into this, you're going to gradually push your average up. And you're always pretty much going to end up with above normal season. So a lot of this 20 in terms of storms will be low pressure systems that develop along a frontal boundary, gain some tropical characteristics, and named as a subtropical storm. And then they'll exit rapidly out. You'll get a lot of storms where it develops as a tropical system for a day and then it's gone. Okay? What we're going to be worried about is that 12 and 6 number. Now, anyone who remembers Hurricane Andrew, which happened late in the season, relative, it only needs one storm to be a really bad tropical Atlantic hurricane season for you. This year, because of the above normal sea surface temperatures, my concern, and this is typical when you're in a positive AMO regime, which is why we're seeing the above normal temperatures, is that you have storms capable of rapidly developing, rapidly intensifying, and model guidance, even though it's improving, and I know they're going to bring on AI and all that nonsense, but it's incredibly difficult to forecast for. Now, with that said, it's not a slam dunk forecast. I know everyone's running around saying, hey, look, it's going to be the worst season ever. Let me give you some caveats that could really mess up this forecast. The primary one is dry air. With this type of pattern that sets up, and let me go back to this feature right here. Okay, so you have this setup here where you have this ridge developing. And you have this signal here which would support, you have your storm track cutting up, very active summer for portions of England and Iceland, and you get most likely a pretty significant heat wave potential around Europe. Now you might be saying, Stephen, why the hell do I care about Europe? I'm going to tell you why you care about Europe and the heat wave that could develop. Whenever you hear that it is very, very hot in Italy, Spain, Germany, France, this is why it's very important for us in terms of tropical weather, because that ridge complex takes all this dust from the Sahara and sends it out into the Atlantic. That dust is the same thing as when they play baseball and they want to dry out the dirt, they throw diamond dust, it dries everything up, right? That Sahara dust dries everything up. So it limits your potential. I think that is going to be the battle that sets up for this hurricane season. The amount of dry air that will come off the Sahara Desert and come into the Atlantic to short circuit promising short waves or tropical waves. And the thing with hurricanes and with tropical lows is that they're very, very sensitive. Okay? If you get a little bit of dust, a little bit of dry air, small amount of shear, completely disrupts the low pressure system. Little interaction with the islands completely disrupts the low pressure systems. On the flip side of that, and this is where the concern is, when you have all of this very warm water, it able to feed on that, they can rapidly intensify. So there's going to be a lot of volatility in that respect and a lot of push back and forth in that respect this season. But if there's going to be one limiting factor that might make some people sweat about their over-the-top forecast, I've seen some people do 26 and 16 hurricanes and whatnot. The one factor that could limit that is that dust factor. And the reason why that is more of an issue is because of the changing state of the QBO, which enhances your potential to see some pretty significant heat waves around Europe. And like I said, when it gets very hot in Spain, in France, in Germany, and Italy, watch out for that dust to come into the Atlantic and shut things down. So that is the evolution of our hurricane forecast. And with that, the best potential for a lot of your activity is going to be, again, we're going to be focusing on the Gulf of Mexico, and we're going to be focusing a lot around the Bahamas and then curving out. So these two areas. And these two areas will be dependent on just how expansive this ridge gets as these tropical systems develop. One of the wild cards here, by the way, with all this is that sometimes you get tropical systems intensify so much that they create their own atmospheric environment and can enhance high pressure to the north of a storm. Like here. So this is, again, something that we're going to watch, and it's going to create a whole lot of volatility and keep us all on our toes. So as we look at the tropical Atlantic right now, not a lot going on. We do have a tropical wave out here. Not much going on. You wouldn't expect much going on. For June, what I'd watch out for is signals like this. See, like where you have this weak cold front hanging around here. You get a wave of low pressure. You get a cold front stalled out around the Gulf of Mexico, washes out, really doesn't have an impact on temperatures, but can set up the development of subtropical low pressure systems like we were talking about. So typically what I want to do is watch out for stalled boundaries here for little weak low pressure systems that head out towards the northern Atlantic, and also any type of disturbance that tries to develop in the Gulf of Mexico. As we move towards July, mid-July and August, then we start to really monitor out here for tropical systems, and that is when we're going to be studying that Western Atlantic ridge to see just how far west these storms get before they start to recurve and head up, turn to the north and move polarward. So that is the seasonal forecast. Let's talk about what's going on right now. We're already at 8:43, so it looks like we're going to be busy tonight. It'll go a little longer. First of all, we have some showers and thunderstorms that are approaching the region, but they are steadily weakening as they do so. Again, this is a weather tap radar and surface map. As these storms move towards the Delaware River, they'll continue to slowly weaken as they approach. The reason why they're going to be weakening is that they're just moving into a more stable environment. So this is why in the forecast for tonight, I do have the threat for isolated showers in the forecast as these storms move in, as they lose the support because they're moving further away from our trough. And you can see here on the latest QT, this is from the HRR latest observation, you have a lot of dry air here in the mid-levels on the coastal plain. So as these storms move in, they're moving into a drier environment, a more stable environment. And so the combination of those two factors is going to allow for those storms to weaken as they move through. But we're going to keep the threat for isolated showers on the coastal plain and, of course, some rumbles of thunder over the northern tier. And you can see, again, with our visible satellite picture from earlier, plenty of clouds are increasing on the way. So what can we learn with the infrared satellite picture? Well, one very important key, look at where our cold cloud tops are really starting to focus. Up here towards the St. Lawrence River Valley and down here. And then weakening here, but still lingering, right? This tells me that your best lifting and dynamics are split between the natural thermal gradient instability that you would see over the southeast and the Tennessee River Valley, which is why we always see our severe thunderstorms. And we said earlier on in the spring forecast back in February, watch out for the plains, Tennessee River Valley, Mississippi River Valley, and the upper Midwest for a lot of nasty severe weather. And we've seen just that. Why? because we knew the negative PDO was going to have a factor. So this is all playing out pretty much as expected. When we take a look at the water vapor satellite picture, you see this feature right here? This is going to head up towards the St. Lawrence River Valley, which means all your best lifting and dynamics are moving away. So your only feature that's left is this one right here, okay, right over western Pennsylvania. When this reaches us by tomorrow morning, it's going to instigate showers and thunderstorms over the region. Also notice, take the upper level winds here, you get this strong jet stream driving into the Great Lakes. Now, this jet stream couplet here supports divergence and diffluence right around here that shifts over the northern mid-Atlantic by tomorrow morning. Again, these are observations. This environment tells me strong lifting here, moderate lifting here, subsidence down here. So as you get this process evolving with the upper level winds, this tells me that most likely we're going to have support for showers and thunderstorms tomorrow morning, then a break. Why a break? Because you're going to use up all your dynamics in the atmosphere in the morning hours, and then it's going to take too long for everything to rev back up in the afternoon because you have to get rid of all the low clouds and precipitation and more of a stable environment after the storms move through. At 850 millibars, we could see in our winds, hey, look, that Western Atlantic flow is already starting to develop at 850 millibars. There is our pattern already starting to show up. An echo. Interesting. So now we have moisture transport. We have shortwaves moving through. What that leads to is a nice line of thunderstorms taking shape. Influencing our traffic for tomorrow. So if you have any plans for tomorrow, I don't know, like graduation or anything like that for tomorrow morning is going to be rough around the Philadelphia and New York City metropolitan area. You're traveling, rush hour, going to work. It's going to be nasty. I'm not expecting a lot of these to be severe thunderstorms, but I do expect heavy downpours, poor visibility, some rumbles of thunder, some lightning. The primary severe threat out of these storms is that you have all this moisture getting thrown up into this dry environment. And what happens when you have this type of dry environment with stronger lifting is that you get condensation in the mid-levels, and that cooler air at the mid-levels slams down towards the surface, and that's called downburst wind gusts. So that leads to strong wind gusts over 50 miles per hour. That is how you could end up with a severe thunderstorm. Nothing tornadic or anything of that nature. If you do have plans for the afternoon hours, the good news here based on the HRR and also based on the NAM guidance here is that after these storms blow through in the morning hours, the afternoon, it'll be a little humid out. I can't rule out an isolated shower, but this really saps a lot of the instability in the atmosphere. So you end up with a lot of mix of sun and clouds, an isolated shower or a thunderstorm, but nothing widespread. So more than likely you'll be able to dodge anything significant going on out there. As far as the Memorial Day weekend, the good news is that Saturday and Sunday looks pretty good. You get a lot of weak short waves moving through, nothing really organized. Once we get to Memorial Day, you get this stronger short wave coming in, but it's taking its sweet time to get here. You get a lot of divergence and diffluence over central Pennsylvania, but not so much over the northern mid-Atlantic. It doesn't reach us at all levels until the evening hours. So what this tells me is that Saturday and Sunday, mix of sun and clouds, isolated shower. Not a big deal. If you're going to have outdoor plans, hey, go out, enjoy it. Have your barbecue. Just have a backup plan in case the shower hits you. That's all. On Memorial Day, increasing clouds throughout the day. Showers more widespread towards the late afternoon, evening hours. But let's face it, the evening hours by Memorial Day is kind of like Sunday in the evening on a normal weekend. everyone's just getting ready for the next day to go back to work. So everyone just chills. In terms of the amount of moisture, one thing that stands out here with the 700 millibar relative humidity is that you don't get sustained moisture at 700 millibars. Why is that important? This is a signal to me that you get a lot of mix of broken clouds more in the lower and mid levels, and you get a lot more breaks in the upper levels, not a lot of widespread shower potential here. This is why we're going with isolated showers in this environment. You see your best potential for rainfall really shows up tomorrow morning and Monday evening. But at the same time, a lot of precipitable water valley hanging around the region, especially down towards southern New Jersey and southeastern Pennsylvania. So probably a bit humid, a bit sticky. In terms of cloud cover, again, a lot of mixed sun and clouds for the weekend, but not too bad. And then on Memorial Day, again, cloudy, but not everyone's going to see rain in the morning hours. So if you're going to parades and whatnot, that should be fine. But overall, I think it'll be an okay weekend. Not perfect. Look, if you're looking to get a tan, probably not the best weekend for it. But if you're looking to have a barbecue, spend time with your family, give your condolences and whatnot, and celebrate those who have served, then I would say not too bad at all. And again, Friday, if you have any plans for that, shouldn't be too bad. Again, an isolated shower is possible, but nothing really significant. No real heavy precipitation expected all the way through Sunday. And then on Memorial Day, increasing cloud cover. Watch out for a few passing showers. Your heavier rainfall comes in more in the evening with a few showers and maybe an embedded thunderstorm. So with that, we've gone over quite a bit. Now let's see what questions we got. And I will answer them. Of course, I'll start here first with all the premium members, and then I'll go into YouTube, which looks like it's pretty active as well. And then we'll find out what's going on in X. So, pretty active, pretty busy evening, that is for sure. So could we put Monday's weather on repeat for the summer? Not this year. Sorry. Also, how many people saw the forecast for the West QBO and La Nina heading into winter and already declared winter canceled? I would say there are a lot of factors that go into a winter forecast as opposed to a summer forecast because there's a lot more lifting parameters involved. On saying that, okay, if you're looking for a lot of snow, probably not the best combination of a La Nina and a negative or a positive QBO. It's not impossible. I just wouldn't bet my life savings on it. That's all. I wouldn't cancel winter either. That's just stupid. Interesting solar observation. Other than one sunspot on the northwestern quadrant that is rotating quickly away from the Earth, the rest of the sunspots are lined up along the equator, which, if I recall correctly, is an indication that the solar peak is getting really near. Yeah, I mean, we've been seeing signals that we're heading towards a solar maximum for quite some time. Solar maximums are really, really tricky to forecast for because there's still so much to learn about the sun. We're learning every day, literally, something new and interesting. And with the quality of the tools that we have to monitor and learn about the sun, that has increased exponentially. So yeah, there's definitely a signal for that. And then once we hit that peak, then we'll start to see the sunspots drop off. The influence on the Earth, aside from CMEs, which, for example, the auroras and whatnot, in terms of weather is concerned, we really don't feel any influence from a quiet sun about 2-3 years down the line. What's driving the warmth in the Atlantic? Well, two things. First of all, you have the natural state of a positive AMO. Okay, that's where you get cooler waters in the central Atlantic and warmer waters in the tropical Atlantic and down towards the coast, the African coast. With that, it's very similar to the drive of the PDO. Okay, they're ocean currents and part of a natural process. The enhancement of the waters, of course, you're going to throw in some potential of the climate change factor with colder stratospheric temperatures supporting more enhancement of 500 millibar heights. You also have the dust. So you have dust, dry air that's able to enhance that warming. So those are some of the factors. And of course, there is theories that because of the above normal temperatures over the past decades, right, that is absorbed into the ocean, builds up kind of like a bank until we get to where we are right now. But it's a mixture. It's not just one thing. The 23Z HRR has a nice round of thunderstorms through northern New Jersey and New York City. Yeah, it definitely does. Let's see if I can pull up that data and I'll share it. Let's see, 1 minute. We'll go back. Okay, so the latest HRR data around 3 a.m. Yeah, but you know, one thing noticed with the HRR, look what it does. It tries to weaken it and then tries to develop another cell. This could be... See, the reason why I don't like... Let me scroll right here. My one concern with forecasting strengthening storms in this area, heading in this direction, is that they're coming off of the Hudson Highlands. Okay, they're coming off of the higher plateaus in northwestern New Jersey, and when storms come off in that scenario, that influences and enhances subsidence. This is why you typically see storms weaken as they come in here and then intensify again with the urban heat island. But during this time period, it's difficult to pull that off. So this is why I like the idea more of a weakening thunderstorm or thunder shower. Not as impressive of a complex. And then I like this because this lines up really well with the approaching divergence and diffluence we were talking about with these waves of showers. So again, tomorrow morning, either way you slice it, it's going to be nasty. But if you have plans, let's say 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I think you'll see much better weather conditions. There are major elections coming up in the U.S. and U.K. Expect weather and climate hysteria to be turned up to 11. And they always are. Saw yesterday that we are in the longest stretch of no EF5 tornadoes since the scale was introduced in 1950. Yeah, hopefully it keeps up that way. One thing to remember with tornadoes is that there's a lot of mesoscale factors. We're also being able to record them better, so we get a better idea of just how strong they are. Will be clear and dry all day on Friday. I think the afternoon, especially as you head towards New York City, is going to definitely be pretty sunny. Just a few clouds here and there. I think as you head down towards, let's say, Wildwood, Atlantic City, Cape May, better chance for an isolated shower. But in no way, shape, or form am I looking at a washout for any of the days coming up this weekend. Also for Sunday, I know both spots are out of your area, but what does it look like for Indy 500 Indianapolis at noon? Does that matter? Rain matter? I don't know. Let's take a look. I really didn't check. I don't keep it. The only thing I keep an eye on is baseball and football. And right now, understandably, I'm not exactly too happy with baseball. Let's see. Noon on Sunday. Let's see here. Well, it looks like you're going to be dealing with showers. Well, they got windshield wipers, right? I mean, they'll be fine. Let's see here. In late afternoon, Charlotte, North Carolina. Ugh. Well, look, I think that the Michelin Man is going to do very well. Like that guy with the tires. Just put on some rain tires. You'll be fine. Premium membership is well worth it. Thank you. Floyd was a tropical system moving up a front that really helped generate a lot of rain. Absolutely. That's a great example. Did the big hurricane seasons of the 1950s have a positive AMO? And if so, were most of those years La Nina years as well? Positive AMO, yes. Not all of them were La Nina. Some of them were neutral. None of them featured an El Nino. Okay? So you had neutral and you had La Ninas with a positive AMO at the same time in the 50s. What does it look like tomorrow around Newark Airport between 10:30, rain, and 11:45? More rain. Showers and thunderstorms exiting the region. I don't expect much in the way of clearing from west to southeast until we pass the noon hour. All right, let's take a look at YouTube. Let's see what we got here. Is there any flash flooding potential in New Jersey for tomorrow? Tomorrow morning, I think some of those thunderstorms with the heavier downpours with precipitable water values around 2 inches, I think there's a potential for some urban flooding, certainly some major ponding. Take time driving tomorrow morning in that rush hour. Hopefully no Canadian fires this summer. Well, not many that will impact us. They're already going in Western Canada. You'd think that someone would, I don't know, put out the fire in Canada, but whatever. Okay, fine. Don't want to clean out the brushes, whatever. But because our winds are predominantly coming in from the southwest or from the east right now, we're not really going to be dealing with that too much. Last summer, we had a lot of our surface and mid-level winds coming in from the northwest and the north, which basically took all that forest fire smoke in Quebec and Ontario and dropped it right into our neck of the woods. Heading to Island Beach Park. Let's see. Let's see here. How high are the chances of severe thunderstorms in southern New Jersey come tomorrow afternoon? Slight. Again, it's going to come down to if we get that downburst wind gust scenario. I expect most of these storms to feature very heavy downpours. Honey, is there anything going on X today?
No, there's something on Facebook though. So
Okay, what do we got on Facebook? Okay, what do we got here? Learning all the new social media. This is fun.
it's not new, but
Well, you know. And I'm Gen X. Everything's new. Yes. Let's see. Let's see what we got here. How's sunrise forecast looking for Rockaway tomorrow? Well, I would definitely say that with the showers and thunderstorms approaching and you're fishing, well, the fish like rain, right? I don't know. I heard that the fish like rain. Well, if the fish like rain, you're going to have a great time out there. But it's going to be a bit stormy, so be prepared. And with that, I think we answered all of the questions. Let's check out, make sure. Let's see here. Yankees crushing Seattle. Of course they are. Don't get me started on baseball tonight. Don't do it. I am severely. I am not. Let me just put it this way. This is the last thing I'm going to say, and then we're going to close out. Okay. I am not mad at the owner for spending money and doing the right thing and trying to put together a team. How is it that you have a 10-year contract and you're batting under 200? My shortstop can't hit. No one can field. When they pitch, they can't hit. When they hit, they can't pitch. I don't know what is going on, but I've seen more understanding of the strike zone in a Little League game than I have seen in the past week with the Mets. And I am not happy. I'll put it that way. I know Yankee fans are happy. Hey, Philly fans and Yankee fans, enjoy your season. I think it's going to be very interesting. I think, that could be something this year. Keep an eye on that. It could be a very interesting year for both of those teams. But my Mets, they're going to make me lose more hair, and I don't have much left. So, I don't know. That's it for tonight. I'm going to close it out. I hope I answered all your questions. I appreciate you being here. And as always, stay safe out there.